start with you, if we can, and how you explain the UAE's foreign policy strategy, which is fundamentally geared towards serving its economic interests. Can you just set out where the UAE's policy stands at present?
Becky, thank you for inviting me, for the organizers for their invitation and having the chance to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Now, yeah.
I think that's a very good start. I think the UAE, the UAE currently, and I've been saying that, and I hope I don't repeat myself, but the UAE, I think, since the last 7 years, has had a foreign policy that is mainly geo-economic. And geo-economic means that is where the thrust of our foreign policy is, and you can see it in the many things that we are doing and lump it together, and you can see that the drive is basically about economics. And economics doesn't only mean our economy, but also economics as a tool to create better geostrategic conditions in the region. With countries that are around us, with countries that are beyond, and you can see many of the initiatives there. I think as we are in this stage, we are basically looking forward and trying very much to move from a sort of geo-economic policy where the focus is investment and trade to one where it's geotechnological. So where we actually have a foothold in the various cloud computing and the various AI changes that are changing the whole world. Having said that, we also live in a region rife with a lot of challenges. So the idea basically is how to manage these challenges along with our friends and partners, and Egypt definitely is on top of the list there. Having to manage these challenges, but at the same time, the main driver is our geo-economic approach, and the main ambition is our geotechnological approach.
You and I have spoken a lot over the last 10 years, but very specifically over the last sort of 18 months to 2 years since the current conflict has been ongoing. And you have regularly told me that the policy of containment, sort of this maximalist approach that we've seen in the past, is over. There is a genuine need for de-escalation, a need for economic integration. This region has, taken a responsibility for itself, perhaps encouraged by others, not least the US in the past. Sort your own backyard out, and that is what this region is up to now. So let's just be very specific. I started by saying that the economic success of this region will be driven by security and by political and social stability. Can I ask you very specifically to explain what it is that you, along with other Arab partners, are crafting as a day-after policy for Gaza to ensure the social and political stability of that part of this region and security going forward?
Well, I think I refer you back to the statement that came out from the President, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, a meeting with the American Secretary of State. I think it encapsulates what you said. I think the mention is basically 3 things that are very clear, and I think they basically chart the UAE's course. I think number one, it is a resilient position against any plan to move the population of Gaza into other parts of the world. And I think in that position, of course, Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia and all Arab countries are also with us in that position. So clearly that is part of it. I think the second, affirmation here is that Gaza does need a reconstruction plan, a massive one, but that reconstruction plan cannot really take place without a clear path to a two-state solution. So clearly here, you need the political stability of a roadmap in order for these big investments to come into place. I think the third part is more regional, also in the same statement. And that regional part is we all have to work together to de-escalate. I mean, the region in the past year plus has gone through what is a geopolitical earthquake. We will need time to absorb what that means for us. But clearly, the damage that we see in Gaza, the damage we see in South Lebanon, plus, of course, the Syrian situation after 13 or 14 years of civil war and crisis. All this needs for us to take stock of and clearly understand that the path forward is de-escalation, but the path forward is a clear reconstruction, but with political clarity. You can't just go and sort of invest billions without that political clarity and come back to see yet another conflict. I think that position is very clear.
So that is a different profile for governance.
Definitely. And since we are here in what is essentially an investment and economic forum, I think we have to understand that geopolitical risk is part of the scene. And I think we have to understand that also standardizing geopolitical risk in the Arab world is unfair, because the Arab world extends from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean. So, you've got different political climates, etc. And today, geopolitical risk is not only confined to the Middle East. If you want to invest in Africa, you want to invest in Europe today with the war in Ukraine, or you want to invest in the Far East with the whole tension there. This is, I think, something that we all need to understand, that it is part of the calculation. I think what the UAE has done is through policy of primarily thinking of a geo-economic approach and de-escalation, we are really dealing with the issue of with the geostrategic risk.
Minister, you are Minister of Investment and Foreign Trade of Egypt. You are not the Foreign Minister, and I understand that. But within the context of how we are starting this conversation, we'll get on very specifically to sort of the investment strategy for Egypt going forward. I must ask, and I'd be remiss if I didn't, to say that you are a member of a government that is at present certainly taking a lead amongst a group of Arab partners in crafting this day after policy for Gaza. So what detail can you provide for that? And through your lens as a member of the Egyptian government, I just want you to pick up on some of what Anwar was talking about when it comes to the importance of security, stability, and a change in the architecture here.
Thank you, Becky. And thanks for the organizer. I'm pleased to be here. It's always a pleasure to be in Dubai or Abu Dhabi. I think just to address the point one, the details of the plan will be decided next week at the Arab League meeting in Cairo on 4th of March. But I think what we can see is very clearly is that one, what is happening is getting us all together, uniting around one direction for a solution to the Palestinian situation. And I think I fully agree with what His Excellency highlighted is now at the center stage is one, we need to provide a plan for the Palestinian to build their own country. Second, it's the two-state solution that's at the heart of everything. And again, it's not only a de-escalation, but de-risking the whole region. That's what we want. Because again, as we shift economically, what we want to make sure that this region can stabilize by its own forces, and that's what we're trying to do. I think again, I've been in government for 7 months, and what is very clear, whenever I travel, mainly to Europe and even to the US, is that I get that message. We appreciate the stability of Egypt. We appreciate your consistent principled approach to these conflicts. We appreciate your not meddling into these conflicts. We appreciate that you're always promoting peace. That was such a reassuring message for me as a member of the government, member of the economic team, to build our economic narrative. Because people see Egypt as actually a cornerstone for stability in the region. People appreciate our presence and actually being an active negotiator for the good aspects of what we want to see.
I mean, that position is one of necessity, correct? I mean, the economy has been in a rather precarious situation for some time. You see the sort of, certainly there's sort of seeds of optimism at this point. And we'll talk about the sort of investment decisions that you're taking at present to promote further growth in the Egyptian economy. But this is ultimately out of a position of need as much as anything else.
I wouldn't say that. I think our political position has been consistent over years, decades. Egypt never meddled in any situation. Egypt is always principled in its approach to foreign policy. So I wouldn't say that. But you're right. The last 3-4 years, our economy has been affected by certain externalities, including COVID, including the Russian war in Ukraine, which we're one of the largest importers of wheat, corn, and other commodities. But also the Gaza situation. We are a neighbor. We share a border with Gaza, and that's also important. We've been the key provider of actually support to the Gazan population over the past almost 2 years of this really atrocious situation in Gaza. So, but again, out of all of this, the stability of Egypt, the getting together between our key countries of the region, I see it as a positive. I'm cautiously optimistic that we will get out of this stronger, and the focus will be the integration economically and building a stronger region.
And that's what I want to talk about next. Before I do that, very briefly to both of you, do you believe, and I'll start with you, that President Trump's deal, as it were, for Gaza was intentionally provocative to force the hand of Arab states to actually come up with a plan?
Well, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, to be honest, Vicky, but I think that President Trump, as we know, is a disruptor in many areas, and I think the Arab, let's say, the state system was up to the challenge, in my opinion, and I think it allowed the Arab state system to step up, and we saw, for example, the informal meeting in Riyadh and subsequent meetings also in Egypt. I think these are all parts of stepping up to address the plan. I think the plan, literally, the statement of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed is very clear that, we're completely against any, movement of any Palestinian people from Gaza. But I think the plan, on the other hand, also puts across the challenge part that you spoke about. So the idea basically is how can we have arrangements that will actually rebuild, totally devastated Gaza, and how can we also ensure that, that we don't have a reoccurrence of a seventh Gaza war once we have put these arrangements in place. I mean, these are real challenges. I think the answer, as I articulated earlier, are fundamentally about a clear political horizon for a Palestinian state. I mean, we can't really sort of, wiggle our way out as the international community from that. And as you mentioned, containment has failed. So if containment has failed, I think this is the answer that is, the conclusion is very clear here. The conclusion is we do need to a bold plan of reconstruction, but that plan of reconstruction must ensure that we don't go back to a situation of conflict. And to do that, you have to have a clear path forward where the Palestinians actually have a state.
Does Egypt feel to any degree coerced by Donald Trump, given that Egypt is the recipient of foreign aid? I must ask, is there a sense of being lent on here? Any sort of quid pro quos, or how would you answer that?
Again, we have a principal approach to matters. The right for the Palestinians to live in their own land is a principle. And I don't think, again, I don't want to say political statement, but no, we're not going to take pressure based on this. I don't think this is the position. I fully agree with His Excellency position. I think Trump is a disruptor, and I take what is happening as actually positive, that we in the Arab region will put a solution, and that solution will be the course of action. And again, the right for Palestinians to live in their own land and to have finally a place to live, hopefully within a proper governance and a proper way of living. I think that's what we will try to push for.
I promised I'd drill down on investment decisions, so I'm going to do that now. Anwar, I'm going to come back to you and explore further this sort of tripartite geopolitical, geoeconomic, geotechnological sort of three-legged stool that seems to be emerging here, and you've discussed this before as a sort of, as a UAE priority, and that sort of geotechnological stool very much involves the investments that are going on in AI and advanced tech, and very specifically those we've seen into the US and indeed Europe of late. Before we do that, Minister, let's concentrate on your file very specifically. I'm sure you'll be relieved that I'm doing that. Look, you're focusing on boosting the appeal of Egypt as an investment destination. Can you just explain the main legislative and economic reforms being implemented to help achieve that? I know, for example, the Egyptian Sovereign Fund for Investment and Development, the new name of the Sovereign Wealth Fund, has been integrated into your ministry. So just explain what's going on, if you will.
I think, let me just try briefly. Egypt is in a major transition. That transition is about the last 10 years has been rightfully so led by the government to stimulate the economy after a revolution in 2011, another one in 2013, and then finally stability in 2014. A country of the size of Egypt, 3 years of complete stoppage to the economy, in any textbook you need to stimulate the economy. And that's what the government stepped up to do. And over the past 10 years, we've invested $550 billion in needed infrastructure, not only for the last 10 years, but also for the lack of investing in needed infrastructure in the previous 10 years. But what happened is, one, the private sector share of investments is actually went down from 70+% is to 25%, which means that the role of the state needs to be defined. And I'm being as clear as possible. The second, our debt to GDP need to be managed, so we need to create the fiscal discipline that is needed. The mandate for the government that I'm honored to be part of is very clear: to create the business environment that is conducive for the private sector to operate and to lead the economic development for Egypt. And in doing so, we've derived, again, I believe that the government role is policy and policy and policy, and we should do policy reform at the heart of everything, especially in crises like this, to come out as competitive as possible. The 4 policies are very clear. Monetary policy, and I think today we have a clear policy, attractive for investments. Investors will understand it because it's hinged on inflation targeting and a flexible exchange rate. It's working since March last year, since we've taken that decision, and we've cleared all the issues. One currency, the exchange rate is not by far the focus, but it's the inflation. And what is more important is that inflation is actually going down. That's what matters for investors. In March this year, in less than a month, I think we will break the 20%, we'll go back to normal teens level. And in next year, I think we're going to be normalizing, and that's very important. Second policy is the fiscal policy, and I'll be as brief as possible. Our objective on the fiscal is to be as competitive as possible in the effective tax rate. And here, when I talk about an effective tax rate, I'm talking about not only the tax, but also the fees and levies that are put by all the agencies of the state. So we know the challenge. We know how to remedy this. We already canceled a couple of taxes. So we started, and we're already on the path to this. The big challenge is the fees and levies, and we're addressing that as we speak. The third is the trade policy, which is under my ministry, but I work very closely with the Ministry of Finance as well as other ministries. Where we are is not in a position where I want to be. I want to be in a top 50 trade competitiveness within a couple of years. I decided, and again, I've took the action to lower the time and cost of the releasing goods and services and goods being imported or exported by 75% this year. I want to be top 20 in the trade competitiveness. Trade is all about ease of trade. A tax on import is a tax on export, so I'm relieving all the impediments that are put on imports, because we see that the potential for Egypt is really export. We're so competitive today to be the hub for industries, for services, for software. With 32 million people as a working force, we're at a position where we need to reap that opportunity. So trade is at the heart of this, and trade competitiveness, I see we're going to achieve it. The final, just to address your point on the Sovereign Wealth Fund, it's the crowding out, the role of the state. The solution that I'm putting forward is, because again, the fund has moved to my ministry literally a couple of months ago, is I want to move the state-owned enterprises in batches to the fund, to be well managed, to maximize the return on state assets. I think we have a great example here in UAE, the ADQ, for example. They've done that. Many other countries have done it. This is my field of expertise, and I see we have a lot of good companies. As we move them, get the private sector to run them, have the proper governance, partner with the private sector, list in some cases, so the perception of the Sovereign Wealth Fund will be maximization of the yield on the return, value add, and value creation. These are the four pillars. And finally, ease of doing business. So digitizing, building the state-of-the-art digital platform, and again, working closely with our friends from the UAE as the benchmark and build from that.
And I think it's important to point out that there are some clear lessons to be learned from the success of what is going on here, and the partnership, of course, that you have as you know, the historically close partnership that you have, but keenly, of course, some recent outbound investments from here in Egypt to help sort of right the ship, as it were. We have got hardly any time, but the time that we have left, Anwar, I promise to come back to you. Just the sovereign wealth investment outbound into the US, for example, in AI and advanced tech, part of the policy for the evolution of this economy, an economy whose success, you have told me time and time again, you want to see cascade around this region. So the last couple of minutes to you, if you will.
Definitely. I think a thriving region is in everybody's interest. And I think more cooperation and more coordination is good for everybody. And some competition is good, but I think at the same time, greater coordination, greater learning from each other, etc. I'm a big believer in free markets, Becky, and I think this is part of the UAE's success. That, you know, consistency in basically adopting a very free market economy. And I think right now, clearly, we can't see the world changing and the economies of the world changing in terms of what's happening in technology, and not to try and sort of, you know, hold into that train and try and get a chair in one of those compartments of that train. And I think this is what we are trying to do. That is part of the picture. Part of the picture is, you know, we are a $500 billion economy, but for a $500 billion economy to grow and grow, we have to bring new revenue streams into that $500 billion economy. And I think these revenue streams, as we see it, are in technology. As we do that, I think from a foreign policy perspective, the message should be, as I said, geoeconomic. So it's not only about us, but also about extending to the Arab world, extending to India, extending to Iran, extending to others, and trying to sort of get partners, whether it's a logistical project or whether it is investments in energy or whether it is investments in various other things. I think if you see a macro picture in the Arab world, what really looks at you starkly is a very, is a young population with huge unemployment. So clearly, we need to create more opportunities at the macro level. And I think the driver to do that is always a free market economy.
I started by saying that we are seeing, seismic, generational change as far as the security architecture of this region is concerned. We are looking at a region that could look quite different. We don't know quite how different it will be going forward. But this idea of navigating a new Middle East, which is ultimately what this panel was about, I think is a fascinating one, an important one, and will provide huge economic success should the region get it right. For the time being, it's been terrific having you both on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you, Becky.